A quiet afternoon at the park shatters when Officer Kyle Mendez spots a young boy sitting alone, clutching a stuffed puppy and whispering something he can barely make out. Before he can act, a frantic woman rushes over, yanks the boy away, and vanishes into the crowd. Kyle's instincts scream that something is off, and what begins as a routine patrol quickly unravels into a desperate hunt to save the boy from a twisted reality. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you believe in the power of courage and justice, hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping stories. The late afternoon sun bathed the city park in a warm, golden glow. Officer Kyle Mendez strolled along the paved path, his boots scraping the ground as he surveyed the bustling scene. Children's laughter filled the air, blending with the creaking of swings and the steady pound of joggers' shoes on the trail. Families lounged on picnic blankets, their voices humming gently under the canopy of rustling leaves. Kyle had always liked this park. It was a pocket of tranquility in the city, a place where he could briefly forget the grimmer realities of his job. But today something felt off. His gaze settled on a small figure perched on a bench at the very edge of the playground. The boy couldn't have been older than 6. His mismatched outfit, a bright hoodie paired with green shorts, looked slightly worn. He held a stuffed puppy, one ear flopped from too many squeezes, and his small hands gripped it tightly, knuckles pale. Kyle slowed his pace, watching from a distance. The boy's head darted left and right, scanning the park with an anxious tension that clashed with the carefree scene. Approaching carefully, Kyle used the skill his training had taught him. Gentleness was crucial when talking to children. "Hey there," Kyle said softly, pausing a few steps away and crouching to look less imposing. "Are you all right, buddy? You look like something's on your mind." The boy flinched, clutching the stuffed puppy tighter. He didn't speak immediately, his wide brown eyes flicking to a spot behind Kyle. At last, in a voice barely above a murmur, he said, "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers or else." A faint chill crept down Kyle's spine. "Who told you that?" he asked gently. The boy glanced over his shoulder again, his lips trembling. "He'll be really mad if he sees me talking to you." Before Kyle could inquire further, a woman stormed over. She looked rattled. Hair unkempt, dark circles under her eyes, part of her shirt hanging loose. Her jittery movements and frantic stare put Kyle on alert. "I'm so sorry," the woman exclaimed in a breathless voice. "He wandered off. I told him to stay right by me." She gripped the boy's arm and lifted him off the bench. The child offered no resistance, but his slumped shoulders and lowered head set off alarms in Kyle's mind. Kyle straightened, expression calm but firm. "Ma'am, are you sure everything's okay? You seem shaken." The woman's eyes flicked from his badge to his face. "Yes, of course. I got distracted and he ran off. He's my son. Kids, right? Always on the move," she said, forcing a hollow laugh. "What's your name, ma'am?" Kyle asked politely, maintaining a curious undertone. "Deborah," she answered immediately. "And your son's name?" "Jacob," she replied without pause. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to get him home. He's been feeling unwell." Kyle hesitated, his instincts roaring that something wasn't right, but without concrete grounds, he couldn't stop them. "All right," he said in a measured tone. "Take care." Deborah nodded stiffly, already hustling the boy away. He glanced back once, his dark eyes connecting with Kyle's in a lingering, haunting moment. A flicker of desperation shone there, a silent plea that tightened Kyle's chest. He watched them disappear along the path, the boy's slight form overshadowed by the woman's anxious stride. Back at the station, Kyle couldn't shake that encounter. Every word and gesture echoed in his mind as he made his way to his desk. His gaze drifted to a faded missing person poster pinned to the corkboard, and he froze. The boy in the photograph was smiling, his hair neatly combed. Printed beneath was his name, Jacob Tanner. He had vanished over a month ago from his front yard in a quiet suburb. Kyle's heart sank. The resemblance to the boy at the park was unmistakable. The same wide, earnest eyes, the same soft features. Snatching the flyer, Kyle's thoughts raced. If his hunch was correct, the boy he had just seen was not Deborah Daniels' child, but a missing boy in urgent need of rescue. The station's regular clamor swirled around Kyle Mendez as he paged through the case file. Harsh fluorescent lighting flickered, casting an unforgiving glare on the aged photograph clipped at the top. It was Jacob Tanner, his eyes bright, his grin wide, his hair styled neatly. Kyle ran his fingertip along the edge of the picture, recalling the frightened boy in the park, the difference in those same eyes stark. Once filled with warmth, now dulled by fear. The pages laid out Jacob's disappearance. He had vanished from his front yard while playing with a small car, last seen at around 2:15 p.m. A witness had spotted a light blue sedan but could offer no further detail, so the investigation stalled. Kyle leaned back in his chair, frustration gnawing at him. His gut told him the boy in the park was indeed Jacob, but instincts alone wouldn't be enough. Detective Naomi Fuentes' office was small but orderly, commendations and framed photos dotting the walls. Kyle stepped inside holding the file. Fuentes, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, arched an eyebrow. Mendez, she greeted, setting the mug aside. "What's on your plate?" Kyle placed the folder on her desk. "I think I saw Jacob Tanner yesterday." Her expression sharpened with interest. She flipped through the file's contents. "You're positive it was him?" "Not absolutely, but the boy I saw matches his description. Same hair, same face. The woman with him was twitchy. It all felt wrong." Fuentes leaned back, tapping her pen against the desk. "These cases are rare, Kyle. After a month, odds are grim. But if you think there's a chance, we have to dig." "Exactly. I tried talking to the boy. He whispered that he wasn't allowed to talk to strangers, or something bad would happen. Then she pulled him away." Fuentes nodded. "Let's start at the beginning. We'll revisit his disappearance and see if the details line up with what you observed." They spent hours reviewing the file, analyzing statements, and comparing old leads. As Kyle read, he noticed inconsistencies. The neighbor's account of the blue sedan lacked clarity, and it seemed no one had seen the car come or go. "There's something here," Fuentes murmured, pointing to a note about a camera in a nearby lot that had somehow failed to capture anything relevant. "If the woman at the park is our abductor, she's been careful. No cameras, no credit card trail." Kyle agreed. "I'll head back to the park tomorrow and see if anyone else noticed her." "That's wise," Fuentes replied. "But be cautious. If we tip her off without enough to pin her down, she'll vanish for good." The following afternoon found Kyle at the park once more, the sun hanging low and throwing long shadows. Children shrieked happily on the swings, joggers circled the walkways, and vendors dispensed ice cream and hot dogs. Kyle strolled to a hot dog cart run by a wiry older man chatting with patrons. When a customer moved on, Kyle produced his badge. "Officer Mendez, mind if I ask some questions?" The vendor squinted, a hint of wariness in his voice. "What's this about?" "Yesterday, a woman and a small boy came by. She seemed edgy. Brown hair, mid-30s. Ring a bell?" The vendor scratched his chin. "Yeah, actually. She's been here a handful of times, always with that boy. Clings to him like she's afraid someone'll snatch him. You ever catch a name? Or see a vehicle?" He shook his head. "Nope. She comes and goes fast. Buys him a soda or a snack and bolts. But she's definitely jumpy, almost like she's hiding." Kyle thanked him and questioned a few other regular park-goers, but none recalled anything significant. The vendor's observation, however, underscored Kyle's suspicions. Back at the precinct, Kyle relayed the intel to Fuentes. She jotted notes while he spoke. "If she's avoiding public cameras, paying in cash, and keeping a low profile, she's done her homework," Fuentes remarked. "Exactly," Kyle said. "She may be living off the grid, or using someone else's identity." Fuentes tapped at her keyboard, entering the woman's rough description into the department's database. After several minutes, she frowned. "No match. If she's good at this, she's using a false name." Kyle's frustration simmered beneath his composed exterior. "We have to find them soon." That boy was terrified. Fuentes nodded, shutting her laptop. "We'll start canvassing neighborhoods tomorrow. Someone must have seen her or that blue sedan." And if she's using back roads to dodge cameras, we'll narrow it down. Although little progress had been made, Kyle's determination was ironclad. The image of that frightened child refused to leave his mind, pushing him forward. He had no solid proof yet, but his instincts seldom failed him. He only hoped it wasn't too late. Why did Deborah take Jacob, and why did she call him Evan? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you're anxious to see if Kyle and Fuentes can bring Jacob home safely. Stay tuned. Deborah Daniels sat on the edge of a tattered couch, staring at the dim glow of the television that faintly lit the cramped living room. Jacob lay nearby under a worn blanket, his small body curled tight, knees drawn up. He was not genuinely asleep. Now and then, his eyelids fluttered, and his breath was shallow, as though he only pretended to rest. Deborah's gaze hovered over him, but no tenderness glimmered there, only guarded tension. She feared that if he truly realized his predicament, he might try to escape. Deborah clung to the idea that Jacob was hers, that everything was fine, but beneath that flimsy delusion, her fractured logic was deteriorating. Once, she had been the type of mother people admired. Her son Evan had been her world. A bright, spirited 5-year-old with a laugh that could energize anyone. She braided his hair if it got long, packed his lunch, and read him bedtime tales until they both dozed off. But then came the stormy afternoon that erased it all. Deborah had been driving Evan home from a friend's place. Sheets of relentless rain battered the windshield, the wipers barely keeping pace. Evan was humming softly in the back seat, busy with a plush dinosaur. Deborah's phone buzzed. Just for an instant, she glanced away from the road. That was all it took. The blare of a horn and a gut-wrenching metallic crash followed. Their car spun, and when it finally stopped, Deborah glanced back with horror. Evan was still, the dinosaur on the floor, its glassy eyes seeming to accuse her. She never forgave herself. Months after Evan's death blurred into hospital visits and therapy sessions. Friends and relatives tried to support her, but their words rang hollow. Self-recrimination plagued her every time she saw her reflection. Eventually, her husband left too. Deborah was admitted to a psychiatric facility after breaking down at Evan's memorial. For a while, the controlled routines and medicine appeared to help. She learned to say what the doctors needed to hear, and eventually, they declared her stable enough to go home. But genuine recovery was a mirage. Alone again in her dreary apartment, Deborah found little but reminders of Evan everywhere. His toys, his drawings, the dinosaur with its missing tail, the overwhelming silence. She withdrew from the world, abandoning her job, ignoring calls, and sinking deeper into her own mind. She amassed dolls, dressing them in outfits Evan might have worn. At first, it was a coping mechanism, but it grew into an unhealthy obsession. She talked to them, sang to them, wove fantasies where Evan was still alive and nothing had changed. It wasn't enough. She first glimpsed Jacob while driving aimlessly through quiet neighborhoods, longing to relive a time lost to her. She spotted a boy in a yard, twirling around with some small toy. For days, she cruised the same street, cataloging his routine. When he played outside, when he was called in to eat, how his parents came and went. Deborah convinced herself that Jacob wasn't just another child. He was Evan, returned to her by some divine fate. In her eyes, their likeness was undeniable. Finally, she found her opening. One afternoon, Jacob was alone, his parents presumably busy indoors. Deborah parked down the block, heart drumming in her chest. She walked toward the yard, trying to appear harmless. "Hi there," she said, crouching to meet his gaze. "That's a neat truck you've got. I'm looking for my little boy. He's about your age. Think you could help me?" Jacob squinted, curiosity piqued. Deborah's tone was disarmingly calm, her expression warm. Hesitantly, he nodded. Within minutes, Deborah and Jacob had slipped away, disappearing into her battered sedan and merging into the labyrinth of suburban streets. In the present, Deborah glared at the duffel bag on the floor, clothes and random necessities piled haphazardly. Over the last hour, she had packed in a frenzy. Jacob had started asking inconvenient questions. "When can I see my mom again? When can I go home?" Deborah brushed off every query with vague assurances. But with each day, her fear escalated. Every noise outside could be the police coming. Every passing stranger might be on to her. "We have to leave," Deborah muttered, pacing in circles. "They'll find us if we stay." Jacob watched silently from the couch, clutching the stuffed puppy Deborah had given him. "Where are we going?" he asked in a muted voice. "Somewhere safe," Deborah snapped, tension evident in her voice. The boy didn't argue, but his eyes hovered on the window, silently hoping for someone to rescue him. Deborah dropped to her knees, taking his face in her trembling hands. "I won't let them take you away. You're my Evan now," she whispered. "Understand?" Jacob didn't answer, tears glinting at the corners of his eyes. Deborah resumed her frantic packing while he kept his gaze on the window, yearning for a miracle. In the precinct's conference room, a humming projector cast a grainy video clip onto the wall. Kyle Mendez and Detective Fuentes sat watching footage taken from a nearby traffic camera. They saw Deborah Daniels walking away from the park, hand in hand with Jacob. At first glance, they could be any mother and son heading home, but Kyle picked out the boy's uneasy posture and sluggish pace. "He's not exactly trying to flee," Fuentes observed quietly, "but he doesn't look happy either." Kyle nodded. "He's hesitant, like he's worried about making a scene." Fuentes made notes in her pad. "It's enough to link Deborah to that boy, but we need more concrete evidence." "Any luck with the car?" Kyle flipped open a folder and took out a still shot from a second camera. It showed Deborah's beat-up sedan parked near the park's entrance. "We ran the plates. They're registered under a bogus name. Dead end." Fuentes pursed her lips. "She's deliberately covering her tracks. She must know how not to leave a paper trail." She leaned back, pen balanced on her notebook. "Let's approach it differently. If she's that paranoid, there's a reason. Any records we can find?" Kyle shrugged. "Not much. We're combing through license databases and checking utility bills. But so far, nothing." Fuentes opened her laptop and began typing. "I'll try cross-referencing with state hospital data. Maybe there's something there." Minutes ticked by until a match surfaced. Fuentes clicked into the profile, brows knitting as she read aloud. Deborah Daniels, mid-30s, history of psychiatric care. Hospitalized 6 years ago for severe depression and PTSD. Discharged after half a year, showing improvement. She turned the screen so Kyle could see. She lost her son Evan in an accident. She was the driver. Kyle exhaled, feeling the weight of it. That explains a lot. She was consumed by guilt and grief. But how do you go from heartbroken mother to kidnapper? Fuentes shook her head. Despair makes people do inexplicable things. Early the next morning, Kyle and Fuentes visited Jacob's parents, Layla and Ross Tanner, in their modest living room. The atmosphere was tense, the heaviness of worry evident in every breath. Layla held a framed photo of Jacob, fingertips tracing its edges. "He was out front," Layla began shakily. "I was in the kitchen, watching. Then I got distracted for just a moment, and he was gone. Gone." Kyle leaned forward sympathetically. "Did you see anything at all? Maybe a car?" Layla nodded, tears welling. "Yes, a blue sedan. We live in a quiet neighborhood, so I thought nothing of it. Then I realized it didn't belong to anyone I recognized." She paused to steady her voice. "I ran outside, but by then he was gone." Ross's jaw tightened. "We've been living with this nightmare for weeks. Every phone call, every knock at the door, we think it's the police. Every time it's not, it's like losing him all over again." Fuentes rested a hand on Layla's shoulder. "We're on it. We think we're close." Layla clutched the photo, voice trembling. "Please, just find him." Back at the station, Kyle and Fuentes pored over hours of intersection footage. Finally, they struck gold. A clear image of Deborah's sedan leaving the Tanners' neighborhood at the time Jacob vanished. "There it is," Kyle murmured, pausing the screen. "Blue sedan, heading west." Fuentes scrawled notes, voice tight with resolve. "That matches the vehicle by the park. Let's keep tracing it." Using traffic camera data, they followed the car's path, building a rough puzzle of Deborah's movements. The trail led them to a rundown part of town on the city outskirts. Kyle parked a block away, scanning the dilapidated houses. "That must be it," he said in a hushed tone. Peeling paint, overgrown yard, curtains drawn. Fuentes studied the scene. "We'll need a warrant. We can't blow this. One wrong step and she's gone again." Inside that decrepit house, Deborah paced in agitation. The blinds were drawn, and every creak made her twitch. She looked over at Jacob, who sat silently on the couch, clutching his puppy. "You can't go outside," Deborah insisted, her voice shaking. "It's dangerous." Jacob peered up, confusion crossing his face. "Why?" Deborah knelt down, gripping his arms. "There are bad people out there." He blinked, uncertain. I want to play." Forcing a brittle smile, Deborah stroked his hair. "It's okay, Evan," she said, ignoring the name Jacob. "I'll keep you safe." Late that night, while Deborah was frantically tossing clothes into a bag, Jacob sat on the floor with the puppy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small necklace, a gift from his real mother. The pendant glowed faintly in the dimness, like a beacon of hope. He clutched it tight, recalling his parents' laughter, his dog's bark, the warmth of home. Tears threatened, but he stifled them, knowing Deborah mustn't see. "Mom," he whispered into the darkness, "please find me." Silence weighed heavily as Kyle Mendez got out of his unmarked car, the moon casting faint light on the neglected home at the street's end. Weeds choked the walk, and the once white paint was now a dingy gray. Every window was covered, no light visible inside. Detective Fuentes joined him, gazing at the house. "This has to be the place," she said softly. Kyle nodded. "It looks abandoned, perfect to hide in." A SWAT team moved into their positions, footsteps muffled. Kyle and Fuentes approached the porch, treading gingerly on the warped boards. Kyle rapped gently on the door, his knuckles echoing. Inside, Deborah froze at the sound, gripping the duffel bag as her gaze shot to the curtained window. A faint flicker of red and blue light seeped around the edges. "They're here," she breathed, panic lacing her voice. She turned to Jacob, who stared back, clutching his stuffed puppy. "Come on," Deborah hissed. "We have to go. They're bad people." Jacob hesitated, fear flickering in his eyes. "What bad people?" Deborah grasped his shoulders, her voice trembling. "They want to take you away from me, but I won't let them. You're my son now. We'll leave just like I planned." The interior of the house was an unsettling mix of chaos and delusion. Children's drawings covered the walls, some simple scribbles, others detailed. A woman and a boy holding hands, hearts and flowers around them. Toys and dolls were scattered everywhere, some arranged as if for a tea party, others abandoned in corners. Two mismatched plates and cups sat neatly on the dining table, as though set for a never-happening dinner, a single candle flickering in the center. In the bedroom, a makeshift shrine to Evan had been created, photos, drawings, small mementos, ringed by melted candles. A few pictures bore the name Jacob, as if Deborah's mind had fused the two children into one. Outside, Kyle raised his hands where they could be seen. He knocked softly. "Deborah, it's Officer Mendez," he called, voice kept calm. "I just want to talk. Could you open the door?" Inside, Deborah stumbled to a halt, wild-eyed. "Go away," she shrieked. "You won't take him." Kyle exchanged a tense look with Fuentes, who stood a few steps behind him. He turned back to the door, tone soothing. "Deborah, no one's trying to hurt you. I know you're scared. I know you love Jacob, but you don't have to do this alone. Let me help." The silence was thick. Then Deborah's voice crackled from the other side. "You're lying. You just want to take him, like they took Evan." Kyle's heart twisted at the raw anguish in her words. He leaned in, voice even gentler. "Evan was your son, wasn't he? You loved him. Losing him must have been unbearable." Pressed against the wall, Deborah's mind reeled back to an earlier time. Hospital corridors, holding Evan's photo while doctors explained her fragile condition to her sister. The memory stung. She tried to push it away, but the images closed in. Jacob's timid voice broke through her thoughts. Deborah, he ventured quietly. That officer, he sounds kind. Should we listen? Deborah's expression hardened. No, he doesn't care about us. He wants to take you away. Jacob's lower lip quivered. I miss my real mom and dad. I want to go home. Those words punctured Deborah's defenses, and her hands shook. Outside, Fuentes and the team were gathering more evidence, including store receipts for toys and clothes, matching the items found in the house. Everything pointed to a planned abduction. Fuentes returned to Kyle. We can arrest her now, but if we storm in, she might panic. Kyle nodded. I think I can talk her out. We're close. Inside, Deborah's shallow breathing betrayed her unraveling state. She scooped up a kitchen knife, pacing the floor. They won't stop, she muttered. I have to protect him. Kyle, pressing his ear near the door, heard muffled sobs. He took a steadying breath and spoke again. Deborah, I understand you lost someone precious, but you're not alone in this pain. Let us help you. Fuentes checked her watch, tension etched on her features. She's near the edge, Kyle. Too much pressure, and... He nodded. Leaning closer to the door, his voice turned almost a whisper. Deborah, I don't think you're evil. I think you made a terrible mistake. But it's not too late. Let Jacob go. Let him be safe. Inside, Deborah sank onto the floor, rocking back and forth. Vivid recollections swarmed her. Evan's infectious laugh, the sudden crash, the deafening crunch of metal, the hush afterward. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears sliding down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she murmured, letting the knife slip from her hand with a clang. Hunching over, she pressed her face into her palms. Sensing the opportunity, Kyle exhaled slowly. Deborah, please unlock the door. Let's figure this out. An agonizing pause followed. Then the faint clack of the lock resonated through the air. At last, the door opened slightly and Deborah stepped into the doorway, tears staining her face. Jacob stood behind her, clinging to the puppy. I just wanted to be a good mom, Deborah whispered in a quavering voice. Kyle stepped forward, his own voice gentle. You tried to hold on to what you lost, but we can't fix the past that way. She dropped to her knees, yielding without a fight. Officers moved in carefully, securing her while Jacob ran into Kyle's arms, crying. The interrogation room at the station was a bare, windowless cubicle with a single harsh light overhead. Deborah Daniels sat shackled to the steel table, eyes darting from the sterile walls to the detectives who faced her. Her complexion was ashen, and her lips quivered, as though she couldn't stop replaying the events that had led her here. Detective Fuentes set a folder down, flipping it open to reveal photos of Jacob, his family, and various pieces of evidence they had gathered. She studied Deborah, noting the faint sheen on her forehead, the slight twitch in her left hand, the way she refused to look straight at the images. Deborah, Fuentes said quietly, her tone deliberate. Do you know why you're here? Deborah's eyes flicked up momentarily before dropping. I know, she whispered, voice barely audible. You think I did something wrong? Fuentes kept her expression neutral. Can you tell me what happened? Deborah's hands clenched into trembling fists. I didn't hurt him, she said, voice rising. I saved him. He needed me. Behind the one-way glass, Kyle observed, arms crossed. He'd seen countless suspects crack under interrogation, but Deborah was a different case. Her shame and delusion seemed inextricably woven together. Deborah leaned forward, her shackles jangling. He was all alone, she said, voice shaking. No one was watching. Terrible things happen to kids when no one's watching. They vanish. They get hurt. They end up like Evan. Fuentes nodded softly, encouraging her to keep talking. Evan was your boy, right? Deborah stiffened, anger flaring in her eyes. Don't say his name, she snapped, voice cracking. You don't know anything about him. He was perfect. He was mine, and I couldn't protect him. She slumped back, tears returning. But then I saw Jacob, and he was Evan all over again. That smile, that laugh, felt like a sign. Her voice faded as she stared at the table, lips moving silently. Fuentes waited, then pressed gently, What happened after that? A shudder ran through Deborah. I watched him for days. I kept thinking he was in danger, that I was the only one who could save him. Nobody else sees the monsters out there, but I do. I see them everywhere. Fuentes tilted her head. So you thought Jacob wasn't safe? Deborah shook her head fiercely. His parents. They don't know what it's like to lose everything. I do. I was giving him a better life. A safe life. Fuentes stepped out of the room quietly, letting the door shut. Kyle was waiting, his expression grim. She's delusional, Fuentes said, rubbing her temple. She truly believes she saved Jacob. Kyle crossed his arms, gaze steady. It doesn't erase what she did. Stalking that family, taking their boy, isolating him. Whatever her motives, it's still abduction. Fuentes nodded, flipping through the thick case file. We have her movements pinned down, plus receipts and traffic camera shots. She knew how to avoid leaving tracks. It's not just a moment of madness. It doesn't matter how tragic her story is, Kyle said firmly. Jacob's the victim. In another room of the station, Jacob sat on a small couch, knees drawn in, his stuffed puppy squeezed in his arms. Unfamiliar faces bustled around him, until the door swung open and Layla and Ross Tanner hurried in. Their expressions were a mix of overwhelming relief and lingering fear. Jacob, Layla breathed, tears lining her cheeks. Jacob's eyes flew open wide, instantly recognizing them. Mom, he croaked, voice breaking. She fell to her knees, pulling him close. My baby, she sobbed. I love you. I've missed you. Ross knelt too, folding them both in his arms. We're here now, he said quietly. You're safe. You're home. Jacob clung to them, trembling. The ordeal had scarred him, and the reunion was tinged with confusion and anxiety, but relief still coursed through the room. The next morning, the station buzzed as the media got hold of the story, headlines shouting, "Abducted boy returned safely. Suspect in custody." Public reactions flooded in, some sympathetic toward Deborah's grief and mental problems, others outraged and demanding the toughest penalty. Kyle skimmed online articles, jaw tight. It's always the same, he muttered. People say we should have compassion, but no one talks about what Jacob went through. Fuentes joined him, sipping coffee. It's complicated, she said. She obviously needs help, but Jacob's family deserves justice. It's not neat or simple. In her cell, Deborah perched on the edge of a narrow cot, staring at her hands. Lucid moments came and went, each bringing a fresh wave of guilt. I only wanted to protect him, she whispered, images of Evan blazing in her mind. His laughter, his face, the day she lost him. No one came to see her. She had no family left who would visit. Hope flickered and died repeatedly in her eyes, replaced by the hush of regret. Jacob returned home that evening with Layla and Ross. The house looked as it always had, yet it felt different. His bedroom was untouched. Stuffed animals perched on the bed, favorite books still lined up. He paused in the doorway, holding his mother's hand. It doesn't feel the same, he admitted. Layla knelt beside him, tears forming. I know, honey, but we're here with you. Jacob nodded, hugging his puppy to his chest. Entering the room slowly, he began the long process of regaining his sense of safety and trust. In court, the judge's voice rang out in a solemn hush. Based on psychiatric evaluations and presented testimony, Deborah Daniels is declared unfit for trial. She will be remanded to a high-security mental health facility for treatment and rehabilitation. Deborah sat at the defendant's table, expression vacant, her eyes downcast. Sometimes she muttered to herself, fragments hinting at the illusions still holding her captive. In the gallery, Jacob's parents held hands. Relief mixed with bitterness. They understood she was ill, but that didn't erase the nightmares their son had endured. Kyle Mendez stood at the back of the courtroom, watching the conclusion with mixed emotions. He felt relieved that Jacob was safe, yet frustration gnawed at him. Deborah's descent, fueled by grief, had slipped through countless cracks. Later that day, he and Fuentes sat in a quiet corner of the station, sifting through the final documents. Psych reports, old records, everything that showed how Deborah's deterioration had gone largely unnoticed. Here, Fuentes said, tapping a page. She was hospitalized twice after her son died, each time discharged within 6 months. Then no consistent follow-ups, no real support. Cal leaned back, exhaling. All the red flags were there. Her paranoia, her isolation, her fixation. But no one intervened in time. Fuentes sighed. It's a failure on so many levels: mental health services, social networks, even law enforcement. We missed the signs. Kyle's thoughts were heavy. If someone had caught this earlier, maybe Jacob would have been spared, and Deborah wouldn't be in this position. The Tanner's household gradually found its footing. Jacob's presence made the rooms feel alive again, his tentative laughter growing more frequent each day. Layla flipped pancakes in the morning, making him giggle at her clumsy flips, and Ross told silly bedtime stories until Jacob giggled helplessly. Still, the memory of his ordeal cast shadows. Sometimes, Jacob awoke at night, sobbing, the puppy clutched tightly in his arms. Layla would hold him, murmuring, "You're safe here, sweetheart. We won't let anything happen to you again." It was obvious that Jacob struggled with the trauma. Therapy became necessary. One afternoon, he sat cross-legged on a plush couch in Dr. Ina Porter's softly lit office, crayons piled in his lap. Dr. Porter, a notebook on her knee, smiled gently. "Would you like to draw something?" Jacob nodded. "Maybe the park," he said quietly. "Sure," Dr. Porter encouraged. "What do you remember about it?" He paused, brow furrowing. "It was sunny. Kids were playing. That's where I met the nice policeman." Dr. Porter returned a small smile. "Officer Mendez helped you, didn't he?" Jacob's lips curved faintly. "He talked to me, made me feel safe." As he began sketching, Dr. Porter watched carefully. His lines and colors were guarded, but it was clear the sessions were easing some of his fears. "Do you ever think about Deborah?" she asked gently. Jacob froze, the crayon hovering. "Sometimes. I feel sorry for her," he admitted, voice halting. "She was nice, but also scary." "That's okay," Dr. Porter said softly. "It's normal to feel more than one thing." Across town, in the high-security psychiatric facility, Deborah joined a group therapy circle. The environment was bright but sterile, motivational posters on the walls. She slumped in a plastic chair, gaze downcast. When the therapist asked her to share, Deborah twisted a corner of her sleeve. I don't know what to say," she mumbled. "You can start with how you feel," the therapist prompted gently. Deborah's lip quivered. After a long moment, she whispered, "I miss him. I miss Evan. It hurts, like I'm drowning." The group fell silent. Eventually, the therapist softly added, "And Jacob?" Deborah flinched at the name, eyes watering. "I tried to save him, but I didn't save anyone." Tears carved paths down her cheeks as realization crept in. That evening, Deborah sat alone in her sparse room. The walls were nearly bare, except for a single piece of paper taped above her nightstand. On it, in uneven crayon, a woman stood holding a boy's hand under a bright sun, an image both comforting and painful. She picked up a pen with unsteady fingers and began to write on a blank sheet. "Dear Jacob, I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only protecting myself from my own emptiness. I hope you can forgive me one day." She stared at the words for a long while, finally folding the note and tucking it into the drawer. It was never meant to be sent, merely a sliver of acceptance for her own guilt. A week later, Kyle visited the Tanners on a bright afternoon far removed from the recent chaos. Layla opened the door, forcing a tired but genuine smile. "Come in," she said softly. "Jacob's been asking about you. He has something to show you." Kyle followed her into the living room, where Jacob sat cross-legged on the carpet with crayons. Seeing Kyle, he lit up and scrambled to his feet. "Officer Mendez." "Hey, buddy," Kyle said, crouching to meet him at eye level. "How are you?" Jacob held out a drawing, an image of the park, complete with broad trees and stick figures labeled Jacob, Mom, Dad, and Kyle. They were smiling beneath a glowing sun. Kyle smiled, touched. This is really good, Jacob. Thank you. I'll keep it on my desk. Jacob grinned, a flicker of confidence returning to his eyes. As Kyle exited the Tanner's home, he couldn't ignore the weight that still clung to him. Seeing Jacob happy reminded him why he joined the force, to safeguard the innocent and reunite fractured families. But the questions persisted. Deborah Daniels' story exposed cracks in the system. Her tragedy, the overlooked warning signs, and how quickly a vulnerable person could fall through. Walking back to his car, Kyle felt a fresh surge of dedication. The case had been grueling, yet it reignited his passion for protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The world wasn't perfect, and neither was the system, but he wouldn't stop striving for justice. Thanks for watching to the end. If you enjoyed the story, give it a like and subscribe for more tales of courage and hope.